So basically, pickles.
And rice. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tenza Motorsports. Today we're going to be taking a little bit of a tour through all of David's old broken down cars, see if we can't get a couple of them resurrected, go through some future projects that might be coming up sooner rather than later, depending on how some decisions go. And then we're also going to be looking at some vehicles he's going to be chucking. Everything you see on the video is for sale. Let us know. There will be some things that I'm sure will be sold or scrapped before this video is released. There's a little bit of a lag time between us recording the video to us posting videos. So if you see anything that anybody's interested in, just make sure to let us know. So first off, we're gonna start over here. We have our death cart here with us. It is all up and running. Everything is finally registered and it is completely road legal. We are gonna be taking this car on a bit of a road trip here, not too far into the future, and maybe making another video. We've got some other ideas on it where we kind of want to go and showcase it a little bit and drive it some more. But let's start with, what do you want to start with first in your collection?
Let's start with the first car I bought with my own money. And by the way, this is Rocket Girl. She likes to hang out with me a lot when I'm at home. But right over here, this is a 1985 Merkur XR4Ti, and a lot of people have never heard of these. In fact, most of the time that I go to the parts store, they've never heard of these. These were an American version of the Sierra Cosworth that was sold over in Europe, the RS500. And these had a single cam engine instead of the twin cam. They still produced around 200 horsepower. You can easily boost them up to 500, and if you want to get crazy, there's all sorts of things you can do that push them into the 600 range. They are really, really rare. They were only made for a few years, between 85 and 89, and I managed to get two of them. We'll go over the other one later. This one, if we get over here closer, so this car has had a really, really hard life. I got it from a guy that had abused it. I was 16 when I got it. I did not know what I was doing. I learned on this car. I abused this car. I beat this car. I did a lot of things wrong with this car. It wound up with this in it. This is not the original motor. This is a 302 V8, originally out of a 79 Mustang that then I blew up, and then I got a short block, which I then blew up, and then this is another short block, which is damaged. But we're gonna find out today how badly damaged it actually is. This car was a heck of a lot of fun. What's ironic is even with this V8 in it, it was never faster than a stock with the 4-cylinder turbo that they came with. It was a lot more fun, but it was not faster.
So this one originally came with a 4-cylinder turbo.
Yep,
which is
turbo.
What size engine is the 4-cylinder?
It's the Ford 2.3 liter.
Okay, so 2.3 liter.
So that block was in Rangers. It was in race cars, rally cars. It was in Ford Escorts. This was one of the most prolific, not this one, but the 2.3 liter was one of the most prolific Ford engines, and it came in non-boosted, boosted, and ridiculously boosted forms.
So unfortunately, this car, like he was saying, has had a string of unfortunate events happen to it. We're thinking that this one's gonna be scrapped completely. We're gonna be taking some parts off of this. He's got a second one of these that we're gonna be looking at a little bit later. He's got quite a bit of a collection here, so we're gonna go through the cars and talk about it just a little bit. We're gonna show the cool, exciting ones a little bit more so, and then we're gonna be doing a little bit of troubleshooting. David's got to get a couple of these moved around. He's planning on selling some of them, like I said earlier in the video. This one first?
Let's start this one first, see if we can get it going.
Yeah, we'll try to start this one first. So, new gas, new battery. We're gonna remove the hood and see what we can figure out. Oh, is it good to just go? Oh. Sit camber.
I did not feel it. So it's on.
Those that'll keep the rain right off the windshield here.
So the ignition is not working. So now we move over to the successor to the V8 Merkur that I bought when I was 16. This one has a really interesting story behind it. Not going to go into the details, but we'll say that the front end and the bumper and the rear spoiler were stolen off of that blue car while I was doing some military stuff. After I was done with my deployment, I came back and I saw this one in a junkyard. And when I went to look at it closer, if you look down here at the bumper, I don't know if you can notice this blue paint. The guy that built this car had purchased my old bumper, fin, and grill at a farmer's market and put it on this car, and I wound up finding this one in the junkyard. So I got my stuff back. It was a really long roundabout way. So this car was supposedly pulling high 10s, low 11s in the quarter mile, and don't know the exact horsepower. Then he traded it to somebody else for a different car, and the guy that got it did not know what they were doing. They essentially ruined it. They blew the engine out. But these engines, these 2.3 turbo Fords, are so incredibly tough that even with completely blown out rings, and I think potentially a blown head gasket, this thing still runs and still pulls really hard at 17 pounds of boost.
So this is probably what we're most excited about, is this is actually something that could be potentially redone, especially on the channel. I obviously don't do Fords. I've been doing a lot of BMWs, but David seems to have enough confidence in me to be mechanically inclined enough to learn a new engine. I'm a little bit nervous about that, even though the E36 is a little bit newer of an engine to me, obviously not year-wise compared to my M54, but the M52 that we've been working on. So this is something that we're really seriously looking at going through and either making it completely back to stock, because it was running stock just fine, stock internals and everything like that, or maybe potentially some more motor upgrades. But all in all, we're thinking about going through the whole car, repaint, that kind of stuff, and just kind of bringing some life back into this. As you can see, it's been sitting in a field for a little bit. It's having engine issues. And I don't know about David, but this is probably one of my favorite designs from Ford from this time frame. I don't know how to explain it. It's
well, let me just be totally clear. The Cosworth, the Sierra Cosworth version of this car that was sold in Europe, this is the American version of a Ford Sierra Cosworth, was deliberately built to kill the M3. Because we know about the movie Ford versus Ferrari. Ford decides to go after Ferrari, they killed them. Well, in the 80s, Ford decided to go after BMW, and they killed them. We can literally thank Ford, because the BMWs after the 80s became legendary, because they were trying to beat this car, or the European version of this car. Search on YouTube for Brands Hatch, and then the name Soper. You will see two of these cars absolutely obliterating a field of M3s. It's pretty epic. When I got this car, this line right here was rubbing on this pulley and had burned all the way through. It's the boost controller. It's a manual boost controller. So this car was running absolute full out maximum boost. The boost gauge pegs at 30 PSI, and it was pegging and straining. So I don't know how many pounds this was running, but at least 30 PSI, and it would launch like crazy. And then the dipstick would come flying out, and it blew oil all over and drained the crankcase, and the engine light came on. Because the rings are so toast that all the boost is going straight past the rings into the crankcase. But it was running on 30 plus PSI. I've got it turned down to 17, and it runs just fine. So the motor is solid. It needs a rebuild in it, but there is some seriously good bones in here. And on a conservative build, you could push this car to 300 horsepower and have no problems.
So last time I was up here, we actually got this running and took it for a drive.
Yeah.
So
we can get it going again for sure. Had no problems getting this one to run and drive.
Let's do it. So this is running about 17 pounds.
Yep, that was 17 pounds. And that was tossing it sideways just a wee bit, just going straight. You literally lock it down into third gear, wait for the boost to spool. No gear shifting. RPMs are staying pegged at 4,000. And she just goes.
So right now we've been working on the death cart and my 46 as parts continue to come in for the 46. Been trying to keep the 46 a little bit more budget after we talked about it has gotten pretty expensive now that I've actually gone through and done a price, you know, went through and listed all the price. I'll have a video to that up here in the card, but we're gonna try to keep the 36 death cart something more reasonable, probably something closer to a couple grand at the most. Right now we're in at about 950 bucks.
And kind of when we do the budget thing, I think the most expensive is going to be the cage, and I think we'll kind of put the cage off to a side because that's considered safety.
So the last car we're going to be talking about in detail today is this Celica. I'll have David go over this more so. This is his car. He knows way more about it than I do. Like we've talked about earlier, I'm way more into BMWs, but actually David is quite the Toyota guy. In fact, I think David is more appreciative of all cars than most people I've seen. So I'm gonna let David go over this car and tell you guys everything about it.
So basically the Celica GT of the 80s was rear wheel drive, and the highest trim model of the last 2 years was the Supra. And so you had the basic Celica, you had the Celica GT, then you had the GTS. Now the GTS had wider wheels and wider fenders, and then the Celica Supra had a straight 6 engine, wider wheels, a little bit stiffer suspension, a different gearbox, and a different differential, and it had independent rear suspension, whereas all of the Celica only, like the GT and the GTS, were a solid axle. So here's the super duper tricky starter motor. All right, so wrapping this up really quick, we'll just cover some of my other vehicles. This is a 1985, I know, I've got a lot of 80s cars. 1985 Bronco 2 XLS. It is 450,000 miles. My dad got this when I was a little kid. I learned how to drive stick shift on this. I literally drove this car until it absolutely died. I pulled it in here, parked it, and it has never started since. But it needs a complete rebuild and everything, so it's probably gonna go to the junkyard unless somebody buys it in the next 2 weeks. 67 Jeep Wagoneer, and my brother gave this to me on my 16th birthday. I actually rolled it in some juniper trees, and the trees actually protected the body, and you couldn't even tell I did it. Rolled it completely over, came back up on the wheels, and I drove it home. And then it just got super old, it started wearing out, so I bought this one. And this one's only got about 260,000 miles on it. It's got a Holley carburetor on it. It's pretty fast. I took all of the good stuff off of the old green one and put it onto this 79. So this 79 has the quadra-track, it's got the locker differentials. When this thing's running, it'll go pretty much anywhere.
So thanks again everybody for watching. If you enjoyed today's content, hit the like button, subscribe if you are new. Make sure to check out our Patreon, link is in the description below as well. Our Patreon members get to enjoy ad-free early releases of our content. We record several months in advance, so they get to see that a lot sooner. That starts at just $1 a month. Thanks again everybody for watching. We'll see you in the next video.